and the 5 ways to add $10,000 a month to any real estate photography business, regardless of where you're at. I've worked with over 150 different real estate media company owners all across the US. We've worked with a couple companies in Australia, Canada, the UK. And today in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 ways that we have seen work best, the 5 things in your real estate photo business to take a look at, and the 5 ways to add $10,000 a month to any real estate photography business, regardless of where you're at, right? And so a little bit of backstory on me and sort of how we've worked with that many companies. My name is Matthew G. I own a company called Rep Leadership. We're one of the biggest real estate media consulting companies in the entire US, Canada. Like I said, we've worked with other companies in different countries as well. And we also own our own real estate media company called eState Photography. And that company does over $50,000 a month, strictly real estate photography, right? And taking a look at the 5 most important things that we look at when a company comes into our business, the first thing that we take a look at is your pricing, right? And so most people price incorrectly. It's one of the biggest levers that a company has in terms of getting more efficient with the business that's already coming in. And so I have other videos on sort of what we recommend in terms of pricing and sort of how to break it down. But essentially, we recommend square footage pricing. So if you're pricing per photo, or if you're pricing flat rate, or if you're doing something wonky like pricing by the price of the property, or something along those lines, we usually switch companies to pricing per square foot. That being said, there's nuance to everything. And so just to break down sort of why we take a look at pricing and why we like pricing square footage, it goes into artificially raising your average order value, right? And so we like to remove choices from real estate agents. I always say the more choices you give a real estate agent, the more problems you're going to have. It's a little bit of tongue in cheek, a little bit of a joke, but it's actually true. And so with square footage pricing, you removed the choice, right? And so a house is this big, you charge this much. And so a lot of times real estate agents will downsell themselves on your order page, or when they talk to you, you know what, I only need 20 photos, 25 photos. And so you're just losing money there, right? And so what we like to do is switch people over to square footage pricing, and that usually gives us a jump in their AOV, their average order value. There's a few other things that you want to look at in pricing, sort of what are you titling things, right? Are you titling things the way that real estate agents or your prospects talk and think? Right? Instead of HDR photography, switching it to real estate photography. Instead of aerial photography, switching it to drone photography. Little stuff like that might sound a little silly, but inherently, we want to make our order pages and the way that we name our services as easy to read and as accessible as possible to give real estate agents the choice to choose our packages, right? And that's the third part about pricing, which is what packages do you have? And so every type of market is a little bit different. By market, I mean city. Some cities are very package heavy. Other cities are fully a la carte. And you want to take a look at your packages. The advice I'll give on packages is that when you put packages together, instead of putting services together that you want to, that most people that you work with order, right? So let's say you work with a client and they do a lot of real estate photography and drone photography, and you work with a lot of clients like that. Instead of putting together packages where it's like real estate photography, drone photography package at a discount, right, which you'd just be losing money on people who would order it anyways, you want to put those 2 services together with a third service that you want to sell more of with really good margins, maybe adding like a floor plan or a social media reel. So that's sort of how you want to package things. And so I can go way deeper into pricing and pricing models and sort of how that stuff works and packaging, sort of how the theory as to why you want to price that way and package that way. But if you are not confident in your pricing, or you feel as though you copied your market and you didn't really use your own data to figure it out, and now you got some shoots under your belt, I would recommend taking another look at your pricing, because it's a massive lever that we see that raises companies' average order value and can add, like I said, $10,000 a month to your business. The next thing that we take a look at is how are we retaining our current clients, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. That's soft skills, right? And sort of, are we showing up on time? Are we following up with our agents after shoots, wishing them good lucks? Are we following up with them before shoots, asking them if they want any other services, right? Little soft skill things. What's the email look like that we're sending out with the content in it, right? But Also, are we doing outreach to our current clients? Are we sending them emails on a monthly basis to retain them? Are we giving them offers to keep them around? It's important to understand that lifetime value is the only reason that real estate photography exists, right? If we only made 200, 250 bucks off each client and there's only a few thousand clients, well, that's not a business, right? That's a side hustle. But the reason that agents keep coming back again and again and again is the reason that our companies can do as much revenue as we do. And so it's very important to spend a lot of time retaining those customers. And so if we see customers walking out the door, or if you haven't taken a look at people that have worked with you in the past that don't work with you recently, right, I would recommend taking a look at those things and following up with them, doing outreach to people that already know you, right, getting them to like you again. And so that's another lever that we pull that's massive that can add $10,000 a month to your business. Moving on to number 3, right, which is going to sound more obvious, but are you doing outreach? And I'm going to keep this one very simple. Most of the companies that come into my business, right, Rep Leadership, our consulting company, and I ask them, almost every company I always ask, I say, hey, what did you do when you had 0 clients? When you had 0 customers, what did you do? And they'll say something along the lines of, I did outreach, right? Maybe they said they called people or DM people or texted people or whatever it might be, emailed people. They'll say something like, I did outreach. I went to brokerage meetings, right? And then I say, okay, cool. And did you get clients? It's like, well, yeah, I'm at XYZ revenue a month. I said, awesome. It sounds like it worked. Why'd you stop? Right? And so that's kind of a joke, but it's true, right? You set out, you were like, I want to get clients. You did outreach, you got clients. Maybe it wasn't on the time horizon that you initially anticipated. Maybe it wasn't directly when you sent the text or when you sent the DM, but you got clients. And if you didn't do the outreach, you wouldn't have gotten clients, right? And so I think a lot of times people put a lot of their success on word of mouth, which is important and drives the business. But a lot of that word of mouth was juiced up, or gasoline was poured on that word of mouth fire by the outreach that you did. And so I always say, do more outreach, right? Our company's been around for a really long time. We do just as much outreach today as we did when we first started. And so just because someone knows you doesn't mean that you can't do outreach to them. If they've never worked with you before, it clearly hasn't worked yet, right? And so you want to consistently do outreach and get people to know, like, and trust you. And so that might not be the best answer in the world, but you could be doing more. So do more outreach, and that's how you grow your company. Now, if you're watching this and you're already at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month, and you want to get to the $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a month, well, outreach is a lever that you have, right? Maybe it's a little bit different, a little bit more nuanced for you, right? There's different types of outreach rather than texting and calling. There's some paid ad stuff that you can do, some more higher ticket sales things you can do, retainers and things along those lines. But no business should ever stop outreach. And going into the fourth thing that we look at to add $10,000 a month to a business, that has to do with, are you upselling your services when you are on the shoot? Now, this is a big one. This is a massive unlock that companies have. When you book a client, that's where most real estate photographers think the transaction stops. I did outreach, or someone told this person about me, they booked me, and now I'm done with my sales process, and I'm going to go out and start fulfillment. But any good business owner would tell you that fulfillment is just another way to sell someone, right? It's called a money model. And so essentially what you want to do is have multiple ways to drive revenue in your business. So maybe the first initial booking is the initial amount of money that they're willing to spend with you. But you should treat your appointments as an opportunity to sell them more things. Now, again, you have to understand your prospects. And a lot of times people view sales as some sort of slimy, sleazy thing and coercing people to make decisions they don't want to make. But I view sales as telling people and teaching people things they don't understand. And you would be amazed that just by asking people, hey, do you know what a social media reel is? Hey, do you want a social media reel? Do you want drone photos on this property? Just by asking, right? Which doesn't really sound salesy at all, you will increase your average order value. You should treat your appointments as an opportunity to sell your services. Just because you sold some of your services doesn't mean you can't sell more. And that alone, right? If you're already doing 30, 40, 50 shoots a month, that alone can add $10,000 a month to your business just by implementing a question well on the shoot. And you're not going to have a 100% success rate. And that's okay, because lifetime value is more important than one-off shoots. But that being said, it doesn't mean that it hurts to ask, right? And so adding those questions and adding a sales process to your actual shoot itself will grow your business. And then finally, the fifth thing that we take a look at, and sometimes this, I touched on this earlier, and sometimes this doesn't make sense. But if you are stuck in that $20,000 to $40,000 a month sort of purgatory, which sounds kind of silly, but that is a purgatory where a lot of companies cap out at, it's important to take a look at what cash flow models you have in your business. Because if you are dominating your market and you're doing 20, 30, 40% of the total listings that are available for real estate photography shoots, it's going to be relatively difficult to scale exponentially, right? There are certain agents that are just never going to work with real estate photographers, and there are certain agents who are only going to work with specific real estate photographers that aren't you, right? And so once you get to those points, and if you're watching this and you're like, I'm not even there, this part's probably not as important for you, because truly you can choose any of the things I just said and probably just do more outreach and you'll get there relatively quickly. But you should probably take a look at some other things that you can start to sell. Those can be high ticket retainers. That could be social media management. Those could be, little additional things that you can add to your business, right? Maybe a little bit about paid ads or something along those lines, that you're not changing your business, you're starting another company. You're just adding a new way to profit off the prospects that already love you. And so that is a very, very easy way, right? Or simple way, I should say, maybe not easy, a simple way to add revenue to your business once you're already an established company in your area. And so that could be high videos, right? That could be selling high ticket videos to restaurants or business owners, adding paid ads, things, like I said, social media retainer, social media management, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes into higher ticket things that you can sell. But that is how you get to those $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 months. Again, depending on the market. There are some markets like Dallas and LA and Miami and some other areas where you'll be able to scale to $100,000, $200,000 a month doing real estate photography and only real estate photography. But in other markets, like the normal market, you're going to get capped out at around $50,000, $60,000 a month at peak efficiency. And it's important to add other things to your business that can bring more revenue in and really scale to those goals if that's where you want to get to, right? And so there's a few things that I didn't mention, right? I didn't talk too much about hiring people and firing people and building out teams, which is important. I'll make a longer video on that. But that's not the first thing that we do to add $10,000 a month to a company, because that's just adding an expense to a company, right? And so there's a few things that I left out of this because those aren't the things that I would start with. And so if you're watching this and you're under $10,000 a month, right, what you should do is more outreach. And so if you found this video valuable, if you want to watch more, right, like, subscribe, comment, and we have a school community that you can join, right? It's really awesome. We post a lot of tangible step-by-step guides in there, and it's a community, right? We do Q&As. There's a group discussion board. It's the biggest real estate photography community in the country, and I highly recommend joining it. It's less than what you spend on coffee in a month. And so you can find that link in the description below. But like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.